Okay, Chairman Izraelovitz, County Council, thank you for the invitation to speak tonight. I know some of you were at the Community Leaders Breakfast last week, and so for you, some of this may be material you've already seen, but what I'd like to do is provide you a sense of where things are headed at the laboratory and how that may intersect with the roles that you play for us in our community that we share. As I know you are all very much aware, the process for competing the contract for the laboratory it has begun. There is a draft RFP that's on the street today, and I believe today there was a bus tour at the lab for potential bidders. So the process is moving. Obviously, I don't speak for the government, so let's be very clear about that. And I have to be very careful that I don't get cross-threaded with any of the federal procurement laws here. But as things are laid out right now, the contract for the laboratory will transition the 1st of October next year. So that's the pace that we're working to. What I and the leadership team are working on today is to ensure that the laboratory remains strong today, strong to the transition, and strong beyond the transition. And so there are many actions that we're taking today to ensure strength on all three of those levels. As I've said to the laboratory, the work of the laboratory transcends the contract. The laboratory itself transcends the contract. The roles that we play in national security for this nation, and I believe contributing to the world, are all things that are not tied directly to the contract. They're rather what the laboratory does. And so from your perspective as county councilors, I hope that sense of continuity comes across to you as well. As you know, it's also the case that the work that we do for environmental management, which is about 8% of the laboratory's budget, is also going through a contract competition right now. We had expected that the announcements would already have been made on that, but it looks like those are going to be a little bit in the future. But the laboratory continues to do the body of work associated with the EM contract, and I'm very proud of that work. I learned earlier this week that we've completed half of the remediated nitrate salt drums now, and we're working to complete the rest of those, do that safely. And if it's a competition between schedule and safety, we're going to pick safety every time, and that's what we're doing. Let's see, things that are, I think, important from a county perspective are that we continue to bring new talent to the laboratory. As I think many organizations around the country are experiencing today, we are seeing retirements from the baby boom generation, and recognizing that that was the case several years ago, we started working with the laboratory statisticians in the HR organization and developing staffing plans that would address the future needs of the laboratory for a workforce, taking into account projected retirements. Those projections are running very close to what we had expected, and a consequence of that is that last year we hired over 1,000 people at the laboratory, and this year we're on track to hire almost another 1,000. We're doing that, watching our budgets very carefully to make sure that we don't overhire, because that would get us into a place where I don't want to be as lab director. But at the same time, we have to be very careful not to underhire, or we won't be able to execute the laboratory's mission. So we're managing that carefully. We are updating our staffing plans every year. We look ahead 5 years and update every year. So that's what we're doing, and we are delivering on those staffing plans. Now, obviously, with that many new people coming into the laboratory, that also presents challenges for you as the county council, because many of those people will either live here or will want to live here in Los Alamos County. We continue to see about the same distribution that we've seen over many years, with about 1/3 of the laboratory workforce living here in Los Alamos County, 1/3 living down in the valley, and 1/3 living in Santa Fe. And I would note that in the hiring that we've been doing, about 35% of the folks we're hiring are native New Mexicans. So that is again very consistent with the current workforce at the lab, and I expect that it's going to continue to be the case well into the future. Here on the next chart, you can see the distribution of the laboratory workforce. Again, no real surprises there. As we've put in place our hiring plans, we aren't simply saying, well, if a person of this particular work category retires, we're going to hire one of them. Rather, we're looking to say, what do we need in the mission space? And we're working to make sure that our future hiring is based on where we believe the needs are. But our hiring is occurring across all of those different areas of the laboratory. Of course, we need scientists, we need engineers, we need technicians. We also need business people. We need people who work in the safety areas of the laboratory. And so we are hiring across all of those areas because we're seeing retirements in all of those areas. I believe that's good news for students here in New Mexico, for our New Mexico colleges and universities who are preparing students. But from your perspective, again, as a county council, if roughly 35% are coming from northern New Mexico, that means almost 2/3 are moving into the area. So I think that's sort of an important statistic for you to have as you're laying plans for the county. In terms of budget space, our budget this year is at about $2.5 billion. I'm not going to try to walk through the different parts of that budget for you, but if I go back to 2012, our budget then was in the region of $2.1 billion. So an increase of $400 million over the last several years is a lot of new money coming in to the workforce of this community. That hasn't been an accident, I would note. It's something that we've worked hard on. But I believe, as best I can tell, and if I could predict what Congress will do, I probably shouldn't be doing this job. But as far as I can tell, our budgets for next year look like they're going to be very similar to this year. And that's a strong place for the laboratory to be. I believe this is a budget that we can execute to, but there is a lot of work for us to do. So, time will tell. We're almost at the point when Congress should have a budget. We'll see what actually happens. Beginning of October will be interesting. Finally, just sort of a word about what we see as kind of the future of the laboratory. There are 4 broad technical areas that are critical to the success of the laboratory's mission. The first of those is materials. When I look at the mission challenges we face today, materials remains one of the key issues that I believe we as a laboratory are going to have to understand in much greater detail over the next decade. And so on a decadal time scale, we're investing in materials. The second broad area is nuclear and particle futures. Now, I know that we all in this room know that for 70 years we've been working on this. And in much of the physics community, people have moved past that. If you go to CERN, they're not going to be focused on the nuclei in the same way we are. But if we don't take care of that, I don't know how we do our mission. Third, the area that we call science of signatures. And this is really focused on areas where sensors are developing at just an amazing rate. And so if you think about the non-proliferation parts of the laboratory's mission, sensors play a key role in that. But sensors alone are not going to solve our mission problems. We have to be able to gain understanding from the data that we collect. And so hence the information science and technology pillar that underlies the other 3. Of course, we continue to use that for modeling and simulation in the ways that we have going all the way back to the Manhattan Project. But today, in addition to those sorts of modeling and simulation efforts that we have, we're also working in the big data environment to gain understanding from raw data. So those are areas that are areas of investment for us as the laboratory. Let me just say in closing for my prepared remarks, my appreciation for your work as a county council. You provide the environment in which the laboratory and its community of workers does our work. As it happens, I live here in the county, and I very much appreciate the progress that I've seen that you and your predecessors have made in providing the environment for the laboratory and for part of its work.